Welcome to a special edition of the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast, led by your host here, Skylar, taking the reins over this evening as everybody enjoys Memorial Day weekend. And we're joined by an awesome guest tonight, Ryan French, better known as Monday Q Info on Twitter, enjoying quarantine as his, time to shine right now as the mini tours are really taking over the world in the last few weeks of our podcast. So first off, we appreciate you hopping on tonight. Ryan, how's things going?
Very good. Hey, Skylar, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. You guys have been, the hot topic over the last few weeks. Normally this podcast is very driven on, DraftKings, golf betting, and what's taken the world by storm is, the outlaw events. We got to sit down with Noah Hoffman last week, some infamous stories, but the origin of a lot of the publicity to Monday qualifiers and these mini tour events has been yourself and your growth on Twitter over the last year plus. So tonight we're going to spend some time learning a little bit more about your background, what your thoughts are on how the current shape of the mini tour land is and kind of what we looked ahead as the future. So before we really dive in, yourself here as we start, how's quarantine been for you guys? Family holding up okay? You're up in Chicago, right?
Yeah, it's been it's been interesting for everybody, but my wife's a nurse, and so luckily she didn't have to go into the COVID unit for long at all, so that's good. It's I work from home a lot as the account, so it's hopefully everybody stays safe. It's the same for everybody. I say the same thing is my wife and I, kids are healthy, wife is healthy, so we're in pretty good shape.
Amen to that. And, thankful, for your wife working, through these tough times. My role has me in the hospital as well, and it's a crazy world out there. So hopefully everyone is staying safe. This golf is providing us some sanity, I think, over,
for sure.
The last few weeks. So I'd love to dive into your story and, understand one, your passion for golf and two, how that's translated into now has what become, 30,000 plus, followers on Twitter. So let's start back when this first fired up. When did this begin for you?
Yeah, I think to tell this story, I need to go back to prior to the account. So after college, I played some junior college golf and then tried to walk on into a 4-year school, and that was kind of my moment that people were a lot better than I was in golf. So after that, my dad and I used to go take a trip and caddy on a mini tour. So that's really the core of where the event or the account started. So fast forward many years, we did that for like half a dozen years. Wow. All over. We did it sometimes twice a year. I continued to do it. I caddied on at Q School, mini tours, web.com tour, which is now the Corn Ferry Tour, those kind of things. So 2.5 years ago, kind of a perfect storm happened. We lost our long-term nanny. She graduated from college and got a full-time job. The restaurant group I was working for, I ran a group of restaurants, went bankrupt, and our son had brain surgery. So those things together, we decided I was going to be a stay-at-home dad, and I started the account to literally have something to do. There was no everyone's like, oh, you turned this in. I'm like, there was nothing like that. There was no grand plan. There still isn't any really grand plan. There's more of a plan now than there was before, but it's really day by day. So yeah, I didn't want to watch cartoons all day.
Yeah.
And I was chasing, I was looking at guys I had met through caddying. We're still playing Mondays and mini tours. So I was looking at these events anyway. I always have had an interest in minor league sports in general. I think it's a very interesting side of sports that's not covered a ton. So golf in particular, because you spend your own money, you're never getting a paycheck no matter what, unless you play well. And so, that's the start of it. And now it's been, I can't say it enough. It's been the craziest ride. The fact that I'm on podcasts like this and people are interested in what I have to say is very much appreciated. And I never in a million years did I think I'd get here.
It's a really cool story, and so many layers that we could go through and dive deeper on here. And I'd start, I did read that piece. I believe it was Golf Digest or one of the large golf stories that talked about your son. He's in good health or better health.
Yeah,
these days, right?
So Chiari is actually Bobby Jones had it. Chiari can be a wide variety of things. It's not life threatening. It's life altering. And Jack had some kids have surgery once a year. Jack's been lucky enough to have one surgery so far, and hopefully we avoid it. If you met him, you would never guess he's been through this, except for a big ass scar on the back of his head. But if you met him, he's a pretty normal kid. He has therapy a lot. Obviously, it stopped since quarantine, but does therapy and those kind of things. But again, if you met him, you'd never guess he's a normal kid, and it hasn't been through this. So, it's I say the same thing all the time, Skylar, is we spend enough time in Children's Hospital. You get a lot of perspective in life, and a lot of perspective that what you're going through and what we all went through was not as bad as a lot of kids. There's a lot of kids in a Children's Hospital that aren't going to leave. So, it definitely gave us some perspective about what we went through. So he's a good kid, great kid, and so doing well.
Amen to that, and I'm sure a blessing that has came out of this is the time you get to spend with, both your children and get to do what you really love. And, that's, shines through on what you and your dad had did, many years, and the relationships cultivated. It seems like, the start of this and where you felt some of the pull was from players that were interested or conversations you got to have through DMs or phone calls. Still to this day, every single story seems to come almost from one of those players hoping, or a caddy that was there that day. So is there relationships in particular at the beginning that stuck out to you, or, how did that cultivate to them reaching out, and letting Ryan French tell this story?
Yeah, I mean, I think that took some time for sure. I mean, the stories that I first told were guys I knew, or guys I knew that had a direct relationship with someone. And, I think it takes time to build trust that you're going to tell someone's story in a way that they want it to be told. So I think, over the 2 years that I've had the account and I've told stories, is that trust has been built up, that I really hope, at least, that I come across that I'm advocating for players and I want to tell their story in the right way and give a different side of pro golf. And so, at first it was digging a lot my own. Now that aspect of the account is easier as players or mothers or grandmothers or wives, friends, whatever, come to me. And I hope that I've built the trust up enough that they want me to tell their story in a way that, comes across as not looking for money or looking for anything, just to tell their story in a good way. So, that aspect of the account has definitely become easier, but I think it comes through, some years, a year and a half of trust.
Yep, 100%. And I mean, you can rattle off, and for myself following this, tens, dozens of top line stories that come out every single week. There's so many of these golfers out here across the nation, and we've really learned, me particularly, and I think, the rest of what we say, the fantasy golf, industry, the razor thin line of how talented some of these golfers are. I think of the Scottsdale Open, 2 weeks ago, Zach Smith, a kid who had a strong amateur career, goes and struggles a little bit in his professional starts. And then he just kicks Joel Dahmen's ass on, that last day of the Scottsdale Open, along with, Nate Lashley, Kevin Streelman, a handful of tour pros. He shoots a 62 to open the tournament. Like, just some incredible stones on the last day. And that's just one example that we're seeing. So I know there's a million of those, but let's just say on the Scottsdale Open, you really took a charge, in regarding to the Twitch stream and, running forefront on that. What was your takes on that week and kind of maybe the future of what you did there for all of us that enjoyed the Scottsdale Open?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, it's great. Like I always say before Corona is like that many tour players can compete on a PGA Tour level. And I'm not talking consistently, and there's plenty of players on many tours that have no business being out there and will never be on the PGA Tour. I want to be clear about that. People always, as I've gotten bigger, I've got negative comments that like I'm a champion. Everybody.
I still think like Matt Picanso and Mark Anguiano could go 1-2 at the U.S. Open if we get them exemptions. So.
Yes, right. I agree. On the right day, I think Zach Smith, or more importantly, in my estimation, is Carson Roberts finishing second. Carson Roberts was just not a very good college golfer. He wasn't a good high school golfer. He just wasn't a good good in a sense of like trying to be a pro golfer. He averaged 80 as a freshman. So I think that proves his ascension in golf, and his as hard as he works proves that on the right day, Carson Roberts may never be a PGA Tour winner. He might never ever get to the PGA Tour, but on the right day, he beat a large, very good top 100 players relatively easily by a couple, 3-4 strokes. Yep. So that aspect of the Scottsdale Open was great because I always get the question of if these guys could compete in a PGA Tour. And obviously that wasn't a PGA Tour event, but there was plenty of PGA Tour players in the field and two guys who have never been to the PGA Tour finished 1-2. So on the right day, Joel Damon didn't have his best day. Zach Smith did have his best day, and he lost. So it was good. I love that aspect of it, and I love that aspect of what mini tour golf is right now because it shows that line is very thin. Mm-hmm. As far as like streaming it, that was something that me and a couple of buddies worked on very hard and tried to, like, we came up with a new plan. I've periscoped, and then obviously they outlaw toured, took it to a new level and did like 4 groups, and we thought like, hey, let's see what it is. We worked hard. I'm not going to give all my secrets on it, but like, I think it could change the way golf is covered, especially. I'm not a DFS player. You and I have talked about that, but like, as DFS becomes more of an important part, and you guys want to see every shot of every group, it cost me $180. If I didn't have to pay people, it cost me $181 for that stream to put on. Mm-hmm. So, and it was relatively good quality and those kind of things. At graphics, I don't know why the PGA Tour can't do that easily. I've heard the answer of why the Korn Ferry Tour, but I think it opens up avenues. Like, I know the TV contract now on the Korn Ferry won't allow it, but why can't we get to the point that every Korn Ferry event, or Canadian event for that matter, is at the very least part of a stream? So, and the goal of the account has always been to give guys that deserve it exposure. And from a tour's perspective, I don't know why. The fact of the matter is, especially on the Korn Ferry level, some future PGA Tour stars are playing on the Korn Ferry level. I don't know why you wouldn't want to market them and start to introduce them to the world instead of wait till they're on the PGA Tour and in the top 10.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think you're going to see, and we saw the results of how many people were watching that event, on your Twitch that are on, the Outlaw Tour Periscope for Barry Enright's playoff, 2 days ago, 300, 500, 800 plus, viewers that are watching these tournaments live in this space. I know you're close with Jude on Twitter. We talk. He fired off a response. He'd spend $50, just for a membership for that a year. There are so many of us that would allocate a membership or a different type of thing where the financial side should cover it if we know, what can it be. So I'm hoping, that type of experience continues, to what can be for this industry as a whole. So if we talk, what would you say if we state of the union mini tours? You've been educating me, over the last 6 weeks or so on what are the best tours going on. We've only had DraftKings for this, but there's betting odds for the Wednesday Florida Golf Tour coming up. How would you overall, if you had to give a quick synopsis across the United States of what mini golf tours are like right now and how these players have a chance to elevate into the next level?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, there's a storm ripping through, but I mean, this has been good for mini tour golf in general. I think it shines a light on the lifestyle and the players, so that's been great. And obviously, it'll be quickly forgotten. DFS players are going to move back to the PGA Tour, and bettors are going to move back to the PGA Tour. But I think it's introduced and got people interested in a side of golf that just no one really talked about. I mean, and it's been great. I was just looking at the West Florida Tour for Monday. I mean, they have a waiting list, and there was a time that mini tours were great prior to Latin American, Canadian, China, like Hooters Tour and eGolf. I mean, they had Monday qualifiers, and as long as Latin America and China and Canada are going on, those many tours will never be like that, but this is the closest we've ever had to that
for sure
in my lifetime because no one has a place to play. As far as the future, I mean, like there's always some levels. Like the Outlaw Tour will be a fine tour. Golden State's a good tour. The All Pro Tour, which kicks off next week, and I'll be surprised if it's not on DraftKings. That they're probably the biggest mini tour, even when Korn Ferry and PGA are going, they usually get fields well over 100. I've heard the field's very good for that event. It's the premium mini tour in the country left. It's one of the few. It's the higher end $1,200, $1,300 entry fee, 4 days. Wow. $25,000, $35,000 to the winner. And so it'll be very interesting to see the field for that because it's 1 week before the Korn Ferry event. I would assume it's going to be. I assume it'll be very loaded.
Interesting. Okay, because this is I've been talking to, we've had a handful of guests on the podcast. There's content that's going on around these tours, and I've had some conversations with different individuals on would they keep playing Outlaw Tour, DraftKings, would there be interest? Because to me, I've fallen in love with this aspect of it. Like, I enjoy the rise of golfers through the different levels. I spend a lot of time on Fantasy Golf Bag walking through European Tour events and daily fantasy because that was the only other niche golf market available for us here. And I love to see guys like Tyrell Hatton, who was, a stud over in Europe for 2 years, come and win at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. There's individuals like Robert McIntyre and Guido Migliozzi who are coming up from the Challenge and Menators and doing well on the European tours and hoping to come over to the PGA once, they make that leap into the top 50. But this is the cusp, 3-4 levels below that where to me, it's just so intriguing, to see the development and the stars, of these tours and hopefully continue to see their names go, through Q School and beyond. But when I stay on that DraftKings level, when I ask them, if they're interested, my headspace was, the Outlaw Tour or one other tour should embrace this like they have and see if there's a way to run their events, continue them maybe Monday or just Tuesday, Wednesday if they want to avoid Monday qualifiers. Let DraftKings keep the events. Players might still want to play, and then their money's available for them after their winnings or losings to play again on Thursday. Like that seems like the perfect recipe for success. Maybe it's just too easy for me to say, but I could see it keeping popularity if that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that a mini tour outside of the DFS, it's very hard, and many tours have tried this, but to run a mini tour close to Mondays or as possible. So it's the same as a DFS model that you guys want to do. DFS players want to do is like, I don't know why you can't have a Tuesday, Wednesday with a good field from a mini tour standard. Have it run Tuesday, Wednesday. Of course, you're not going to get the same engagement you are now, but what else is DraftKings doing on a Tuesday, Wednesday anyway?
Yep.
So if they get 50% or 25% of the players, there's no hurt in doing it. So yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see if that is part of it, how the mini tours adjust to it.
Yep, it makes sense. And you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess DraftKings is gonna make money if they run the events. They're taking 10-15% of rake. So even if the contest sizes are 50% of what they are, they're still in the green from it. So it is interesting, on that aspect. But if we get back, in regards to your account and we talk future here, you spent some time, I believe, just before all of this kind of got shut down, starting to spotlight some articles on PGAtour.com, following these Monday qualifiers. What's the game plan coming out of here, with quarantine? Is that back on the horizon? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I'll talk to the tour and ask them. I mean, they're only going to 2 spots, so I don't know if that's, and I would be understanding if it's not article worthy. So, I mean, they're going to 2 spots. I finally got a podcast together, and nice. And we'll have that out probably next week, early next week. I'm breaking that here on
Let's go
your podcast.
Perfect.
So we got. I just finished up with the 4th one, and they're all ready to go. Some great stories to start. And so, and I'll actually have 2. I'm going to do another one with a mini tour pro, Neil Johnson. You guys all know him. Mm-hmm. So Neil's had a great career, been grinding forever.
Played everywhere, yeah.
He's played everywhere. Won the Colorado Open. He's had some victories, had status for a little bit, back and forth. So, yeah, he's going to be my co-host on kind of recap each week of Monday qualifying and the mini tours of the week. It's going to be like a 20-minute one and then a traditional interview podcast that I'm going to do. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about a YouTube channel. I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, never planned any of this, so it's kind of like fly by the seat of my pants and figure it out.
That's funny. I was talking with Drew, who runs our website, and he wanted to ask you, he's like, did Ryan anticipate when he first fired this account up, not just what the blow up would be, but now the work you have to put into this and, the effort behind it? You're working tireless, in regards to promoting the good faith with it.
I mean, I always have this, you guys know, there's a person, I won't name him, on Twitter that comes at me all the time. I say, I don't want to make money from this. I do want to make money because I want to keep it going. So my choices are, I'm going to go back to work once this is all over, or I got to figure out how to make money from this so I can keep it going. I mean, the fact is, my wife for 2 years has watched me work. Not for 2 years, because when it first started, I was working 10 hours a week, putting some posts up and whatever. Now I'm working 45, 50 hours a week on the phone all the time, never leave my phone. And I'm finally starting to make a little bit of money, but for 2 years I haven't. So I mean, I have a full-time job that doesn't pay very well right now, but that's, I say this all the time, Skylar, is there's definitely value in doing something you truly love. Not many people get to do that.
Yep.
And if it ended tomorrow, so be it. It's been an amazing 2 years, and I mean, on Golf Channel and in Golf Magazine, that's crazy. Never in a million years did I think any of that. So if it ended tomorrow, so be it. It's been great, but there's definitely some value in, if I could make a quarter of what I made in the restaurant business, but do something I love, I'd sign a 10-year contract tomorrow if that was possible. Because I mean, I love this. I do love it. Obviously, there's drawbacks as you grow. There's people who are gonna be mad at you and say this is stupid and that's stupid, and that part is what it is. But I mean, 99% of this, I'm very appreciative and very. I mean, I can't believe that it's here. So we'll see if I can turn it into a small living.
Yeah, that's, it really is, an inspiration to a lot of us. I mean, me, myself, this is not a full-time job for me. I think a lot of people that work in this industry put the hours in, to your point, because it's something we are truly passionate, and not many, give it the full effort, that you have, and, revolving your life around, something that you truly love. And that's, inspiring for a lot of us that, maybe our toes in the water that want to do it, because like you said, I couldn't agree more on the philosophy of, something that you love doing is always worth trying, because you would have never in a million years, you've said it, imagine where you are right now, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when this fired up. I would say that's fair to say.
For sure. I mean, I remember, I say like different points, but I remember like getting to 1,000 followers. And I was like, called everybody I knew, like 1,000. This is crazy. So like 1,000 was crazy. 30 whatever I have 34,000 is I didn't think that far ahead.
Yeah, it's incredible. What stories, if you have one, stand out over the last couple of years of like of it's a player, making an incredible performance in a Monday qualifier? What things do you think have blown up the most? And Eric Barnes, the one you told recently, sticks out to me because he's right in my Sarasota market. But what are some big ones that maybe people, weren't aware of or that you love sharing?
Yeah, I say a couple things like I owe Chip McDaniel a beer. I have a beer list that I owe people to. Chip, like his trip from the U.S. Open over to, I always say the Travelers, Wells Fargo, doesn't matter, in Boston.
Yeah. Yep.
And got in his car, flew overnight on the red eye, didn't sleep, teed it up, Monday qualified. Chip again when his caddy, this is like part of the things I get now, like his caddy took a picture of his ball up against the trunk of a tree on 18 at a different Monday qualifier. He made par to get into that Monday. And then, it's the account really took off when Corey won.
Yep.
that was a huge part, because it's easy for me to say, a guy who's never played in a Monday qualifier in his life, to say these guys can win on the PGA Tour. But when it happens, obviously it was good. So, Eric Barnes, Daniel Mazzotti, Aaron Power, who I just put a story up. He's a mini tour player. Like, he might never, like, he's injured already. So, like, he'll probably maybe never make it to the Korn Ferry Tour, but he's out there chasing it as much as he can. And, I've been lucky enough to tell a ton of stories. I appreciate the players for trusting me enough to share them. So.
No, it sheds light to everyone out there following, and that's, I think when we talked about inspiration with you, it's inspiration to all of us that are passionate about the game, the stories. I enjoy watching golf for the 500-1 Barry Enright victories, or the Doc Redman second place, at the Rocket Mortgage. Those are the type of things that, to me, even though I may be one of the biggest Brooks Koepka fans out there, like, his dominance is incredible, but these stories are a different level. It's not a life-changing, second place finish like it was for Doc Redman. It's crazy.
That's what I say all the time is like, listen, I'm a Tiger Woods fan. I love Tiger Woods. If I had to choose between watching a Monday qualifier and watch Tiger win the Masters again, I'm choosing Tiger, okay? But what I say all the time is this, like Doc or Corey, in some smaller way, even though he was on the PGA Tour, like it's not. That's why I always say I like the Korn Ferry Tour better, because almost every win is life-changing. They're going to probably get their PGA Tour card, and their life is going to, and their career is going to change forever. On the PGA Tour, it just doesn't happen that often. There's just not life-changing wins. Dustin wins the Travelers, or Rory wins Wells Fargo. It doesn't matter. Like, it's great. It's good for TV. It's fine for the game. It's. I have no complaints against it. It's just that it's not life-changing. Rory's going to collect $1 million, and that's going to be it. The Korn Ferry Tour, almost every week. I go back to Vince Cavello all the time. The guy was pro for 16 years and never kept his Korn Ferry card. And he wins on the Korn Ferry Tour, and now he's going to the PGA Tour. That's literally a lifetime of playing a game he loved, grinding away. Now, he might lose his card this year and never get to the PGA Tour again. I don't know. But that moment was life-changing. End of story. And that's why I prefer this side of pro golf, because I think that there's, like, it just doesn't happen at the highest level. It doesn't happen very often.
Yep, I couldn't agree. The Vince story, the Scott Harrington story from last year, those ones that stick with you. And, this space and this podcast is often, focused on, how do we make money and how do we do this on a DraftKings perspective. And I've talked to you a little bit about, the way that DFS works and, how going after you mentioned to me, does everybody just play Joel Dahman because he's the most recognizable and he's the best player there? Or do you try to, be contrarian and see if you can win it all if, he shoots 74 one day? And what my reason, ultimately in learning about this is, we recognize the talent with some of these guys, but two, you find the examples of Corey Connors, who was a little bit more of obviously a household name, but you find these guys who we are now aware of their talent and kind of their background. I've spent, 6 weeks finding every mini tour round known to man that's been played for the last 18 months, but it's because in a sense too, that this can provide value to hopefully members or different people that this is some talent out there and we can recognize their game that they've played. And, that's kind of leads us into what the Outlaw Tour has done. And, we're ultimately running into, I think, the last 2 events that are currently scheduled for prior to Colonial. But I'd like to spend a little bit of time on this week's field to know some of the names that we've now seen. We're going to be at the Southern Dunes, and it's quite a few names that are brought in for the first time to a field. But anything from your standpoint, stories to tell, talent, we see Norman Zhang in the field, one of the best collegiate golfers to come through in the last few years. Brady Calkins, a stud on the Dakotas Tour. Do you have any names this week that stand out for you that you could shed some light on?
Yeah, Brady Calkins is probably one of the best. You guys have probably got to know him over the last few weeks or whatever, but his Dakotas Tour record is pretty much unmatched. Andre Metzger, who's actually in the field also.
Yep.
Him and Brady have pretty much taken everyone's money in Dakotas. I saw Charlie Saxon's in the field. Charlie's super talented. You and I talked to him about a little bit off camera. Hopefully, the Outlaw Tour will twitch his round. And
yes.
You guys will see some shots around the green that you've never, ever seen before. Trust me. Charlie will use the putter from places you would never guess a pro golfer would think. So, yeah, Brady Schnell's in there. And again, you and I texted earlier it'll be very interesting to see how Norman Zhang plays. And I think Norman's story is the other side of pro golf that people don't often see. I was just looking back at the 2019 amateur rankings, and Andy Zhang was on there. Norman Zhang was on there. All these guys have no status.
That's crazy.
And it'll be very interesting. He hasn't played in a long time, and played in a couple Mondays and didn't play well. So it will be very interesting to see. It's a good field too.
Yeah, we see, the reaction to what happened a couple weeks ago, like Zach Smith, like we talked, he was 750 to 1, at the Scottsdale Open winning it. He's all the way down to 22 to 1 this week. So the research, when you find on these guys, the opportunity, you spend, $10-20 on Zach Smith and you're able to win the same amount of money that he won winning that tournament, which is, crazy. I believe too, Eddie Olson, you're tight with, right? He's in the field this week too. Yeah,
Eddie's got a great story. Here's some inside info. I tweeted about it, but Eddie's been struggling with some injuries.
Yeah.
And, but great story, and really every tournament he's played in besides the one Outlaw prior to the Scottsdale where he was really hurting and
had to get hurt, right? Yeah.
He's really played well. He lost to Cheka at the Parker Open. In a playoff, he won an event pre-Corona out in California, a pretty good mini tour event. And he's a great story. So, Eddie's been. Eddie's been on. He's really been close in the Outlaw. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him, even if if he can limp there, he's gonna play well.
Yeah, that was impressive for him last week, and that was something I had a little bit of hesitation going into the week because, I mean, you're right. He shot 9 over in that outlaw event the week before. In the first round, withdrew from the Scottsdale Open. So to come back that first tournament and get fifth like he did was quite impressive. We have our first, and this is interesting too, and we'll walk through. I know you're headed to an event down here soon. Let's see, Jake Kevorkian is coming all the way from playing the West Florida Golf Tour event on Monday, and then he's now playing the Outlaw event on Tuesday. You mentioned Saxon. He played in Texas with all the big studs, the Merido event last week. I mean, these guys are making their way out there for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good field. I just saw Jonathan Kane's in it. He's playing at the Skyline Open, which is a couple hours away from this event, but that will finish up Monday, and then he'll tee it up here Tuesday. Yeah, I mean, it's John Oda. We didn't even talk about him.
I know.
It's just like it's a really good field. I mean, Sam Triplett. This is probably one of the better all-around fields. And I say this all the time, but Sam Saunders, not that Sam Saunders, but this Sam Saunders is going to break through soon.
And he won the Colorado Open last year, right? Which is probably the biggest event it's $100,000 to first, right?
Yeah, it's by far the biggest. There's only one $50,000. The Waterloo Open is $50,000 to the winner.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the biggest one. I mean, they have like 6-7 qualifiers. Yeah, he's won the New Mexico Open. I mean, he's a really good player, and he just hasn't been able to break through.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. That does strike a chord because we had Noah on our podcast last week, Noah Hoffman, who unfortunately missed the cut. He played well round one, just couldn't avoid the bogeys. Put up a ton of birdies, but a lot of bogeys with it. But he talked about his schedule of what's to come for him, and he's signed up for this week, next week on the Outlaw Tour. Then him and his swing coach are basically touring the country, looking at state opens, maybe Dakota's Tour events. If anybody's like, yeah, that Colorado Open, I think I got to play in a qualifier to get in. Yeah. I mean, people just don't understand, I don't think, the depths. One, I don't think that even the awareness to a pre-qualifier into a Monday qualifier into the event, where there's 150 guys teeing up just in the pre-qualifier. Yes. I don't think people have, the headspace around what is actually happening in this mini tour world. I mean, what is it? I mean, the Waste Management runs 8 pre-qualifiers for 4 guys to get through. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many layers to pro golf. I mean, the Colorado Open will have like 6 qualifiers, and I think, 10 or 15 get from each, but they'll have like 110 people fields. And, I mean, there's pre-qualifiers. I mean, Waste Management is by far the best as far as pre-qualifiers go. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's I think there was I counted them up, I think 698 players teed it up for it was 2% chance to get into the Monday, and then another 1%, whatever that is, combined. And so, yes, 700 guys for 4 spots is
unbelievable.
Is pretty bad odds.
It is, and that's really where I've spent the time over the last 6 weeks just trying to figure out where these guys play. And you see them littered across all these pre-qualifiers. There's Monday qualifiers that don't only run for the PGA, but obviously we have them for the Korn Ferry that you follow as well, and then the Mackenzie Tour runs them. Q School is full of all of these guys. It seems a lot of them have made it potentially to final stage of Q School, or their second stage just, ends up, being constant for them. I think back to the story Kevin Streelman told at the Scottsdale Open. He's like, I think it was my 6th year at PGA Q School when they ran it, and I birdied 5 of the last 6 holes. Yep. What if one of those putts doesn't go in? Yeah. What happens? Is his career the same?
Yeah, I caddied for Ryan Yip a lot. I caddied for him when he won in Canada. I caddied for him at Q School, caddied for him here and there on the web.com. And one year I was not caddying for him, but he was at final stage. He made a putt on the 18th, and this was pre Korn Ferry status. It was, I think, the year before. and he thought this putt on 18 was to get his PGA Tour card, and it wasn't. He made the putt. He thought it was. He missed by one.
Oh.
But I mean, and now he's a college coach, and so like he's literally one stroke away from never being a college coach, more than likely. Would have had his PGA Tour card, and a talented guy like Ryan might have been able to keep it, or at the very least, he has Korn Ferry status the next year and he can get back. Yep. It's such a fine line. I mean, you can look back. I use this example all the time. Martin Piller, Harris English, I don't know, was 7 years ago, made a 10-footer on the last hole of the last event to knock Martin from 125th to 126th on the money list. And Martin's never been the same. Never has gotten back to the PGA Tour. I mean, he has like conditional status, but has never had any real success after that. I mean, a 10-foot putt changed his career, and so that line is razor thin for a lot of players.
Yep, 100%. And again, I think these names, we really hope to continue to see these guys, be successful, hopefully cross over into events that, we can, one, follow, two, wager on because it's fun, to always have some action on this. But I think all of us here at Fantasy Golf Bag, our listeners really appreciate the time you spent with us tonight, Ryan, and, continue to shed the good light on these golfers because these stories keep not only us entertained, but I'm sure it keeps many golfers going. That's the cool part about it, because you're so right. They are this close to that breakthrough that is life-changing. Well,
thanks for having me on, guys, and I'm glad that you guys have gotten a little more insight into this side of golf. And, I've made some friends, including yourself, through this, and so it's I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Of course. No, thank you again for taking this time on this Saturday night here. Nothing better for me, truly, and I'm really excited to get this out. This is going to be a timeless piece for us. So thank you, Ryan, and we look forward to keeping in touch.
Thanks a lot.
All right.